Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Lawyer Checker webinar, which is all about Consumer Bank Account Checker for resellers, which is a product that Lawyer Checker has ran for some time now, and we're delighted to be able to say we're finally really close to being able to launch this with our resellers. So hopefully today, what we will be able to do is first of all set a little bit of a picture and sort of where the risk sits for law firms and why they would use Consumer Bank Account Checker. We'll look at some case studies that have made the national press where this particular product would have saved the law firm. We'll look at sort of how the search works. From a reseller point of view, we'll look at some features and benefits, and we'll dig into sort of how to gauge traction with law firms on this. We'll discuss some of the important changes that this relates to in the industry, and we'll just wrap up with really some of the ways that we can support you as a Lawyer Checker reseller. If you have any questions, there is a question box within the webinar tool. So if we've got enough time at the end of the webinar, I'll be happy to cover those for you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Key Relationship Manager for the North of England for Lawyer Checker. I have been with the business now just over 18 months. A lot of you will have worked with me on different sort of products here and there. Some of you will have other key relationship managers, such as my colleague Emma or my colleague Cheryl. Should you need any help with regarding Consumer Bank Account Checker, they will be happy to support you with that, and we'll come on to that at the back end of the webinar. So I think a really sensible place to start is to ultimately look at where does the risk actually sit. So we've seen a little bit of a pattern within criminal behaviour, probably over the last 12 months within the legal sector, where cyber criminals seem to have had a specific focus on either law firm to client money or client to law firm money. Now, that's not to say that law firm to law firm fraud, which obviously is what you're reselling at the moment in terms of Lawyer Checker account and entity screen, isn't happening. But criminals are clever people. They'll quickly work out where there are gaps and they'll look to infiltrate those gaps. So where does this product fit? Well, when sending monies as part of the administration of an estate or paying the proceeds of a house sale, what Consumer Bank Account Checker would do will validate the destination of those funds by matching what is held on the client's actual bank account to the information that you've entered. So we know that there are 1,400 organised criminal gangs trying to steal money from the legal sector. Any of you who are regularly in touch with our sort of educational content to law firms will know that this is organised crime. It's not what I would class as bedroom fraud. It's sophisticated, high level, and it's organised. Roughly £10 million a year is lost to email modification fraud, according to the SRA. I'm quite interested to see what the new SRA risk outlook, which is due out in September, says. I will have expect that figure to be very similar, probably a small increase on last year's. Further high profile cases have reached the national press this year that could have been prevented by the use of CBAC. So those cases, there's two of them. The first one is this one that appeared in the Telegraph earlier on this year. So this is a law firm in Birmingham. They were paying the administration of an estate. I think it was the ISA that they were paying out to the beneficiaries. Now, already you will have noticed there is a small difference between Consumer Bank Account Checker and what you're already reselling, which is account and entity screen, in that Consumer Bank Account Checker crosses departments. So typically, if you're talking to a law firm about account and entity screen, you're realistically only focusing on their property department as to where this adds value. But with Consumer Bank Account Checker, there are other departments that send monies to individuals, wills and probate and private client being a prime example, also occasionally with PI and family law as well. So this particular firm in Birmingham paying the administration of an estate, the beneficiaries had given the law firm the details of where they wanted the money to go. They then received an email purporting to be from the beneficiaries, basically saying, can you pay this money into these account details? Now, that law firm didn't carry out any due diligence checks on that information, and they sent that £60,000 straight to the fraudster. What then happened was the client obviously called up about 24 hours later, and it was very clear and very obvious from what happened that that email hadn't come from the client. They transferred the money to a fraudster. You'll notice the title of this case study is quite interesting. So, solicitor lost my 60k, then tried to wriggle out of paying up. So if you read the article in full, what that paints the picture of was the firm with some typical stalling tactics when this happens. So because of the amount, 60,000, it seems like what the firm tried to do was to cobble the money together internally. Now, they reckon where the vehicle froze, that could have caused some significant problems. So hence the reason they probably tried to scrabble that money together and put it for the client. So that's the first one. In terms of how Consumer Bank Account Checker would have stopped this, when they got that email from the fraudster, they could have simply used the details that they already had for the beneficiary, entered the account number and sort code into Consumer Bank Account Checker, and that result would have, we'll come on to the result in a bit more detail later on, but that result would have painted a very clear picture that there was something clearly wrong there and would have saved the firm from that particular fraud. This one is a bit more sophisticated in terms of its complexity. So this one was in the Times in April. London property, a lady called Nicola McConnell, selling on the day of completion. Mrs. McConnell was obviously busy moving, and the fraudster had sent an email with 1-digit difference to Mrs. McConnell's email. Now, the fact that they actually received an email around that time should also have been a red flag, because Mrs. McConnell is 70 years old. Now, that's not to say that 70-year-olds don't use email. They certainly do, but they had had very minimal email contact with Mrs. McConnell throughout this transaction. So clearly that itself should have been a red flag. And that email asked for a certain percentage of the proceeds to go into a different account. So a little bit different to the previous case study we've looked at, and that the criminal's been a little bit more sophisticated. We were just obviously talking about the Nicola McConnell case study before I lost signal. And I think I just mentioned at the point at which the firm did some digging where they traced back and they could see the email which had 1-digit difference. Now, if they had have used the details they had on file for Mrs. McConnell, along with those details that were sent in, they would have very clearly realised from the Consumer Bank Account Checker result that they would have received that this was a red flag and the account didn't belong to Mrs. McConnell, and they would not have transferred the money based on the information they would have received. And this is a really typical threat at the moment which law firms are facing, which goes back to what I mentioned earlier, where criminals are really focusing hard on law firm to client money and client to law firm money. So with client to law firm money, we've seen examples of criminals intercepting emails where firms have sent their bank details to the client. That's been fairly common within the last sort of 6 months or so. So a real focus on those two elements. So examples of where Consumer Bank Account Checker would protect you, other than those case studies that we've just talked about. Now, obviously, human error is one. So if someone provides the incorrect details or there's an error within the digits, Consumer Bank Account Checker is a layer of protection against that. It's also a layer of protection with regards to client impersonation. We've kind of really focused on those within the case studies. An example that I was given last year by one of our law firms is a really good one. So they had an elderly client selling a property, and their family member helps with the paperwork. This firm do a consumer bank account check as such every time they send money to an individual, as long as the amount is over £500. And they had this client, and they put in all the details, and everything came back as a no match. And it was when they actually did some digging, they'd found the family member he was helping complete the forms had actually put in their own details. So the proceeds of that particular sale wouldn't have gone to the elderly client, it would have gone to the family member. A modern potential threat that in the future is portal or e-form details being compromised by criminals. So if criminals manage to access online portals or manage to intercept electronic forms, there's a real possibility of them changing proceeds of sale details. Also, the threat of only having one layer. So you already have one process to ensure funds are remitted to the client bank account. What happens if that process doesn't work or it breaks? Having a layered approach to risk is a really sensible way of managing that. So we would encourage firms, even if they're currently confirming details via telephone, for example, to keep that layer in place and not to remove layers. But this is adding a layer of protection to them. So let's now have a look at the consumer bank account checker search in terms of how that information works and what the result looks like, and also how to digest the results. The details entered and required for the search are all something that the law firm should have upon receipt of their client care letters. So we've got name, date of birth, and address, all fairly self-explanatory. With the address, we'd always encourage when the firm are entering the search to make sure that address matches up to what is held on things like the post office, just so Experian reads it properly. And then the account number and sort code is obviously what the search is carried out against. That's the account number and sort code that will come in from the client as to where they want their proceeds of sale or their administration of their estate to go. You'll see from an ownership perspective, it will talk about whether it's a joint account or a single account. So you will be able to confirm whether that information provided by the client is accurate. And for the firm's invoicing purpose, you've got their case reference number. Now, once that information is inputted, this is a completely instantaneous process. So whereas with Lawyer Checker, you potentially could have a further research report, this is completely instantaneous. So you'll get your instant result. There is no further research for this. It's one result. And there are a couple of different results that you can get. So the most common one is the middle one here. So this will be graded in 4 tiers. So if we start by looking at the top tier, which is the account check, this will effectively show you that the account details you search match to an existing bank account. And there's one of 3 results you can get. Common one, match, which means, yep, it matches to an existing UK bank account. The search will not work for overseas accounts because obviously that data is not held within the same way, and it won't work for business account for exactly the same reasons. Now, if you got a no match, so the account details you search do not match to an existing bank account, that would typically be someone's entered the details wrong, or it is something like an overseas account or something like that. If it was, you received this result here, which is fairly rare, around 10% of results will show this. This is an unable to check. So unable to check means that the bank account does exist, but Experian cannot confirm the ownership. This means a definitive response can't be given. Effectively, that's normally for 1 or 2 reasons. One is because of the age of the account, and Experian don't have consent. So the reason Experian have access to this data is because of a term and condition that is in accounts, which enables details to be used for fraud protection purposes. Earlier this year, they uploaded a further 1.2 million non-consented accounts. So we are starting to see better results come in regards to this. But that's what an enable to check means. If a law firm gets an enable to check, we would advise them to revert to additional layers. So this is whereby we're talking about confirming details verbally over the phone or seeing something physically in print, such as a copy of a bank statement. The account ownership check is the second tier to the result. So again, the same theory applies. This will just confirm whether details that were entered with regards to it being a single account or a joint account are correct. Quite good for things like separations, and this has been quite good in family departments where there are obviously matrimonial splits. And then for me, the crux of the consumer bank account checker result and where the firm will get real value from their results is in the second two tiers, which is the personal details and the address details. So you'll see here, this will give them a score out of 9 as to how accurate the details that you have entered are in comparison to what is held against the client bank account. So you can see anything that scores a 9 out of 9 is a complete match. We would say, by way of best practice, anything that scores less than a 6 means there is a piece of that information that's fundamentally wrong, and we would encourage firms to dig a little bit deeper as to why that is. We will, when we launch this product properly with you all, give you a consumer bank account checker results guide, which talks about what the differences in the grades could be. For example, if you scored a 7 out of 9 within the personal details bit, it's more than likely meaning that a digit is wrong within the date of birth. Occasionally, address details can score low, but personal details will remain high. That's normally because the address has been entered wrongly, and there can be occasions as to why that actually makes sense as well. So you could have a transaction where somebody has moved within the middle of that transaction, hasn't updated their bank account details yet in terms of their address. That might explain why you have a high personal details check, but a low address details check. So this should paint a really clear picture that the money that law firm is sending to the individual, that account belongs to that individual. They've got an audit trail that they can show and demonstrate that. And the audit trail part's a really key bit to focus on and talking about this to law firms as well, and to be able to have something evidenceable. Some of the other layers that we've mentioned, such as copies of bank statements and telephone layers, can be tricky to evidence. There are benefits to evidenceable risk management, such as being able to show that to your insurers, such as being able to create a culture where everybody buys into the same journey as well. A little look into features and benefits. This is a fairly simple product to sell into law firms. It's just about getting them to understand where the risk sits in terms of sending monies to individuals. Once you've got them to understand, and they'll probably tell you some examples of where they've seen that risk before, this is a pretty simple thing to be able to get them to use, because it's dead, as you've seen, it's dead simple and dead easy to use. Features are that it's instant, it's powered by Experian. Experian are well known for the quality of the data that they hold, and we've already focused there about it being an evidenceable result. Benefits to the firm are obviously a reduction in risk, added protection to clients and the firm. So it's not just the firm they're protecting, it's also their clients' money. And likewise, you tend to find sometimes law firms focus heavily on one part of those. It's a good idea to remember or remind them to join them up as well. They're protecting themselves as much as anything. And it's also well received by professional indemnity companies. When it comes to their renewal, this is the type of process they can really sell within the story when they're writing their insurance renewals. And it's also cost neutral. So they can recharge this to clients. We can provide evidenceable wording for them to be able to put in their client letters to do this. Now, some important changes with regards to resellers as to how we're going to roll out consumer bank account checker. So we've looked at the risk, and we've looked at the product in terms of how that works. And now really want to focus on what happens next in terms of our reseller relationships and our reseller journey. First of all, before we go live with this, we need you to sign a new reseller contract. So the current contract that you have only enables you to resell account and entity screen. So we're in the process now of just finalizing the contract, which we hope to be able to issue to you within the next week or so. If you integrate Lawyer Checker AES into your online ordering platforms via API, you'll need to integrate Consumer Bank Account Checker into your API. We've created a new API document which is available for your IT teams or developers to be able to integrate this. We will issue this at the same time which we issue you with your new contract, so we can tie this in together. Availability, it's pretty imminent. We hope to be able to finish this off in the next week and get you reselling this. And confirmation of the costs and your commission. So the RRP, like Lawyer Checkers, remains the same. So we're operating on an even keel, and the RRP is £2.50 plus VAT, and you will earn 75 pence out of each search that you do. In terms of reseller support, I think it's a really good opportunity just to remind you of how we can work together with you to help deliver either consumer bank account checker or account and entity screen as well. And firstly, we're more than happy to work with you to hold a CPD event at a law firm, or attend a training event with you if you're bringing a new firm on for account and entity screen or consumer bank account checker. You have our full support in that. We're more than happy to also run joint webinars. Many of you do those with us already, and they tend to be really successful. We're very fortunate in that we seem to get a very high sign-up rates for webinars, so we find them a really good way of engaging with law firms. Co-branded product cards, so we can also brand up our product cards for you with your logos and your contact details to help you from a marketing point of view. You've got full meeting support from us. So if you're going in to pitch this and you want our help, or you want us to attend a meeting to be able to do this, again, more than welcome to do so. We produce a lot of engaging content at the moment around cyber risk and cyber crime. So we would encourage you to use some of that content wherever possible to help engage your firms. If you want any of that content from us, then please give your key relationship manager a shout, and we'd be more than happy to help send you those if you haven't got them already. And we should be a first resort for cyber resources for you. So any reseller that provides us a lead for a Cyber Essentials accreditation, we will pay you £50 commission as long as they go ahead with us. Cyber Essentials, as many of you will know, is an important part this year of CQS and Lexcel. Lawyer Checker are a Cyber Essentials assessment centre, so we can help deliver that, and it's really good value for you to be adding to your clients. So a real focus on us at the moment is how can we help our resellers add value. Hopefully some of the things that we talk about here can genuinely help you add value to your existing relationships, or potentially help you start new relationships as well. That's pretty much it. I was aiming to be about 25-30 minutes, so other than the unfortunate loss of sound, which hopefully hasn't disrupted the webinar too much, for which I apologise for. That pretty much covers everything from my perspective. I'll leave my contact details up on the screen. If you've got any questions or you would like to ask me about any bits of the reseller support that I focused on there, feel free to drop me an email or give me a call. If I'm not your key relationship manager in terms of being the appropriate region, I will make sure that I put you in touch with your appropriate relationship manager, which will either be my colleague Emma or my colleague Cheryl. So thank you very much for your time and listening this morning. I think it's a really exciting time for us to be working with you. We're really excited to get Consumer Bank Account Checker out to our resellers. We will be in touch with you in the next week once the contract is ready to go, and we'll send that across with the web services document so you can get busy on integrating this. The only thing I didn't mention is that if you are a reseller that doesn't integrate via API and you do lawyer checker manually, you can still do consumer bank account checker manually as well. So that process would effectively just replicate itself to what you're already doing. So thank you very much for your time this morning, everyone. Much appreciated. I'll leave my contact details up on the screen and hopefully speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.